Welcome to TriStar Digging. Appreciate you joining us today. I've been working here now for about 3 days, 3.5 days, I guess it is, and built, as you saw there in the drone video, built a house pad and built a driveway and transition area around the house pad for now. What I want to look at today is the potential of building a pond. In that flyover on that drone video, you saw an area where it looks like years ago somebody had dug a burn pit, and there's some old stumps in it and a little few metal pieces of something we don't even know. So today's job is to explore that burn pit and see what it looks like in the bottom and potentially build a pond there. So we're going to decide today, based on what that looks like, if it'd be a suitable place for a pond, be a nice place for a pond, you know, in relation to where the house is going to be. So we'll look at that, and I know we got good soil. From digging that house pad, I had some really good clay, and I believe this pond it'll hold water. I believe it'll be a great place for us. We'll look at that. I got in the gate there and down to where the property is, and we'll take a look around. And you know, it was dry yesterday. I finished this road up, this circle driveway. I finished that up yesterday, and then I transitioned this dirt in front of the house pad there. But last night we got a big thunderstorm. My gosh, there's a lot of rain here last night. I expected it to be wet, but so I guess we'll find out together if we can build this pond. I hope I don't get stuck trying to clean it out. Well, I'm pretty pleased to see how the pad looks. There's one low spot right there where it's holding a little bit of water, but that'd be easy. It's just barely inside the pad. Just a little bit of a slope right here on this right here will even drain that water out. So there'll be a perimeter footing dug around this house, and then the inside here at different points there'll be footings dug to support the house. But overall, I'm very pleased with how that turned out. And then before I left yesterday, I dug this swell out to drain any water that come off the hill, and all that's going out except for one little bitty puddle right down there. So well pleased with how that turned out. Here's a top side view of the house. I'm on the back side of the house. The house will be facing that way, towards that area there. And then that's the circle driveway that I just showed you. And then this is a area on the other side of that dirt pile right there. Is where we're gonna look at building that pond. Here we are at the burn pit. And there was an old log somebody had laying there. I guess I was gonna burn it at some point. And there's some stumps and some old cardboard. There's a little bit of metal. We'll walk down in here. Walk down in here. Let's see what we got. Yeah, so there's some old metal there. I don't have a clue what that is. Can't even tell what it was. But anyway, they put it in here to burn it. And I didn't bring an excavator to this job. I brought the Cat D5 dozer and the skid steer, 259D skid steer. And then I got the Volvo Packer here. I wish I had an excavator, but I can push all this out with dozer. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to bring that excavator just for this little job here. It would be nice to have it to help dig the pond out, but this soil's pretty soft, this clay is, so it'll push out pretty easy to make this pond if we decide to do that. But this, like any job, is an unknown. All we can see is what we can see, so it's gonna be a mystery dig. that burn pit dug out and I found the bottom in it, and thankfully there was a bottom and I didn't get stuck. You can now see that I've got a good bottom there, and pushed all the charcoal and left over from the fire, and there's a lot of stuff in there. Just not a whole lot of trash, but just stumps and sticks and whatever, but no household trash, and wasn't very much metal in there at all. But you can see now down here in the hole, in comparison to the dozer sitting up there on the hill, I'm standing about 6 foot deep where I am, and you know, this will make a good pond. This dirt is really good and suitable for a pond. If you can see this lighter colored tannish looking clay, there's a dark thick red clay on top of that, but we can get down to either to the dark red clay or even to this tan clay. I mean, that stuff is really, let me find some of it here. There's a little piece of it, but that really makes a good pond. I mean, that would seal off really tight and nice. That doesn't break up. That's just really good stuff. Make a pond with. So we'll see what the owner says when he gets here. We'll look it over. The objective today was to get the junk out of it, to see what the soil looked like and where the bottom was. So we found all that. Well, in the next video, we'll either be digging a pond or filling this back in. So when the owner gets here a little bit later today, we'll look this over and see what he wants to do. But let me know in the comments what you'd do. If this was your property, you've seen what I dug out here, you've seen the conditions of the ground, would you go ahead and spend the money to dig a pond, or would you just fill it in? And just for comparison, I think this would be interesting to know, to take all this, all these spoils, we'd dig the trash out of it, but take all these spoils and put those back down in here, take that clean dirt over there on the top behind the dozer, and to fill this hole back in and dress it up and make it to where it can be planted in grass, probably looking at about $1,000 to $1,200 to do that. Digging a pond, depending on what size pond he wants to dig and how deep and how big an area, it could take 2 to 3 days. So you're probably looking at around somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000 to dig the pond. That's a rough idea, but that's a cost comparison to having the pond versus filling it back in, dressing it up, making it look nice. Now remember, to start with, it was just an old burn pit that needed to be dealt with one way or the other. Well, if you liked the video, give us a big old fat thumbs up. I sure appreciate you watching. Hit the subscribe button, like and comment, and that really helps the channel out, and I appreciate you doing that. Stick around for the message if you will. If not, just remember the Lord loves you and God bless you, and I appreciate you watching. Well, I got that old burn pit emptied out and ready to either fill it back in or build a pond in it. And before the end of the day, the property owner came in, and I met with him, and we looked at that old burn pit and how I've got it cleaned out, and he's made a decision on that. So today's Friday. Monday we'll get started on that, and stay tuned for the next video to see if we fill it in or if we build a pond. So I want to share with you just for a few minutes a message about Joseph in the Bible. Joseph was mistreated by his brothers. He was despised by his brothers because Joseph's father loved him more so than the other brothers. Just a brief snapshot of Joseph's life. He was hated by his brothers. He was sold by his brothers. Well, actually, they plotted to kill him. One of the brothers had an idea that they would sell him to some traders coming down the road, and he'd be sold as a slave. And he was sold into slavery, and he ended up in Potiphar's house. Potiphar was a captain of the guard of Pharaoh's authority, and Joseph was serving in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife had a desire to be with Joseph, and Joseph declined her several times, and then she ends up accusing Joseph of trying to have a relationship with her, and so Joseph was put in prison. To this point, Joseph hadn't done anything wrong, and so now Joseph is in prison, and at one point during his imprisonment, 2 other people, officers within Pharaoh's house, had been put into prison. One was Pharaoh's cupbearer, and the other was the baker, a baker in Pharaoh's house. Those 2 guys had dreams, and Joseph saw that they were troubled, and Joseph asked him the reason for their trouble, and they told Joseph that they had had dreams and they didn't understand them, and they were afraid of what Pharaoh might do to them. So I want to stop here and just say the point of this message, and what we'll get to by the end of this message, is the fact that a lot of times in our life as Christians, we feel like God is on the verge of doing something. It's almost like we see it and it's going to happen. It's going to happen a certain way. And then we're disappointed when that doesn't happen, and we wonder, well, did I misunderstand what I thought God was showing me? Why did this not happen like I thought God was showing me it was going to happen? And that's happened numerous times in my life, that I thought God was really fixing to do this or do that, and it didn't turn out that way. And it really seemed like it was going to. So what we'll find out here in just a few minutes, that Joseph found himself in the very similar situation. That he felt like that circumstances had come around to the point where he had an opportunity through this to get himself out of prison. So what I want to pick up in the scriptures in Genesis chapter 40, verse 12, and it says, "And Joseph said to him," this is the interpretation of it, the 3 branches are the 3 days. "Now within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and to the former manner when you were his butler." Verse 14, this is Joseph's plea to the cupbearer to remember him when he is released from prison, that the cupbearer then, when he's restored, that he would mention to Pharaoh about Joseph. So, "But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into this dungeon." So Joseph goes on and interprets the baker's dream. The baker's dream doesn't turn out so well. The baker is basically told his dream that Pharaoh was going to lose his head, and Pharaoh was going to hang him from a tree. And turns out from reading the story, that's what happened. So the baker didn't turn out so well, but the cupbearer fared pretty well. So we're told in this story that in 3 days it happens exactly like that. The cupbearer was restored to his position of being Pharaoh's cupbearer. And then in verse 41, it talks about Pharaoh then having a dream, and 2 years has passed. That's crucial, and that's important, because Joseph had revealed to the cupbearer his dream, and the fact that he was going to be restored to his authority and to his power within Pharaoh's court. And Joseph, I'm sure that he was certain that by doing this he was going to be set free. I'm sure he was probably convinced that his days of being in prison there were short, that he was going to be released. But 2 years passed, and I'm sure that Joseph was frustrated after that didn't happen, and those 2 years probably seemed like 20. They drug on and on and on, and he probably was like me. A lot of times I feel like that God had forgotten about what I was going through, or forgotten about the situation. But as the story goes on, Pharaoh had a dream about 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. But Pharaoh didn't know the dream. Pharaoh had summoned all the magicians, all the soothsayers, so to say, and all the wise people, and no one could interpret that dream. And the cupbearer in verse 9 says, it's called here the chief butler. The chief butler spoke to Pharaoh, saying, "I remember my faults this day, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me into custody in his house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker." So the cupbearer remembers, because Pharaoh's now had a dream. The cupbearer now remembers that Joseph had interpreted his dream, so he thought, well, maybe he can interpret Pharaoh's dream. So he told Pharaoh about Joseph. Pharaoh summoned Joseph from the prison, and Joseph, in fact, come into the Pharaoh's presence there. Said he changed his clothes and he shaved. I guess he's looking pretty rough. So he come into the presence of Pharaoh. Pharaoh told Joseph the dream, and Joseph interpreted the dream for Pharaoh. And then, not only did he interpret the dream, he gave counsel to Pharaoh on how to, in those 7 years of plenty, to store up grain, to store up food for the 7 years of famine. So Pharaoh, in hearing that, he was impressed by what Joseph had to say. In verse 37, we pick it up here. It says, "So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck." So here we have Joseph in prison, summoned by Pharaoh to interpret a dream. Joseph interprets the dream and then gives counsel to the Pharaoh on what he should do. Pharaoh finds favor in Joseph and sets him in second command of all the land of Egypt. So Joseph, 2 years prior to that, thought he was getting out of jail. God wasn't ready to restore Joseph at that moment 2 years prior to this. It was in God's timing, it was in God's plan that God would restore Joseph to a point that Joseph would never even imagine that he could be placed in. Get this, Joseph was placed in second command, only answering to Pharaoh. The day before he was in prison, thought he'd been forgotten. So the story goes on, and the reason that God set him in place as second in command of the land of Egypt and under Pharaoh is because in those 7 years of famine that were coming, God restored Joseph to his family, to his father and to his brothers. When his brothers came to get some grain from Pharaoh, the story just goes on from there. But the point that I want to make is, just because something has happened in your life as a Christian and you think God has let you down, or God has forgotten you, or that God didn't bring to pass what you thought he was going to do, or what I thought he was going to do, and then we give up and we get frustrated. This story is a lesson to us that God has far more in store for us, and more of a plan for us than we can ever think of or imagine. Now, I am in no way teaching health, wealth, and prosperity gospel. That is false teaching, to teach that everything gets better and everything's just going to be fine and you're just going to be blessed with all this. That is not in the gospel. But what I'm telling you is that God has a plan for your life. You may not be second in command in Egypt under Pharaoh. You may not be second in command of your work where you're at, but God has a plan, and he has set that plan to work in your life. Don't give up. Don't get frustrated because it doesn't look like that God is going to fulfill the plan the way that you've got it figured out. Because God's word says that his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. So God loves you, and he has a plan for you. And so it's my desire to pass on to you, don't give up hope. Don't give up the faith. Hang in there and see what God's got planned for you. So if you enjoyed the message there in the video, give us a big old fat thumbs up. I appreciate those. I also appreciate the comments that you give. And I appreciate you watching the channel and helping it grow.